The champagne flutes caught the city lights like 1,000 tiny mirrors, each one reflecting a piece of the life I was about to burn down. Our anniversary party sprawled across the rooftop of the Mason House, one of those restored industrial buildings downtown that pretends the Rust Belt never happened. Glass walls on 3 sides showed off the decaying skyline, hollowed-out factories in the distance, gentrified lofts closer in, and somewhere out there in the darkness, the truth everyone was pretending not to see. My wife had insisted on this venue. "It's us," she'd said, meaning it was her, meaning it was expensive, meaning it would photograph well for the carefully curated Instagram story of our perfect marriage. I stood near the bar, nursing my second bourbon, watching her work the room. 10 years married, and I'd forgotten when she started moving like that. Hips tilted just slightly forward, shoulders back, that laugh that carried across conversations like she was always the most important person speaking. Maybe she'd always moved that way. Maybe I'd just stopped being the person she was moving toward. Daniel, right? A cousin of hers. I'd met him twice, remembered his face 0 times, appeared at my elbow. Hell of a party. Jennifer really outdid herself. "She's good at that," I said. "You work at Hamilton Ridge too, don't you?" "I'm in IT security. Network infrastructure, mostly." His eyes glazed over the way they always did when I mentioned my job. People heard IT and immediately started thinking about their Wi-Fi passwords and whether I could fix their iPhone. They never heard what I actually said. Security. Infrastructure. The guy who sees everything, tracks everything, logs everything. The guy who knows. "Well, cheers to 10 years, man. You're lucky." I smiled and raised my glass. I'd gotten very good at smiling. Across the room, Jennifer threw her head back, laughing at something Trevor said. Trevor Marsh, Director of Creative Strategy at Hamilton Ridge Analytics. 6'2", gym membership he actually used, perfectly maintained stubble that probably required more product than my wife's hair. They stood too close. His hand rested on the small of her back. Not obviously inappropriate, just familiar enough that everyone noticed and pretended not to. My phone buzzed, a text from a number I'd saved as board contact. "Everything in position, waiting on your signal." I typed back, "Patience." "Uncle Daniel." My niece Sophia appeared, 8 years old and wearing a dress that matched her mom's. "Aunt Jennifer says you're going to give a speech." "Does she?" "She said you probably forgot, but that's okay because she prepared something." Of course she did. I knelt down to Sophia's level. "Can you keep a secret?" Her eyes went wide. She nodded. "I didn't forget. I've been planning my speech for months." "Is it going to be romantic?" "It's going to be memorable." She giggled and ran off to rejoin the other kids, and I stood back up, catching my reflection in the glass wall. 42 years old, still had most of my hair, though it was graying at the temples now. I'd put on maybe 15 pounds since the wedding, nothing dramatic. My suit was off the rack from 3 years ago, while Trevor's was clearly tailored. I looked exactly like what I was, a middle-income IT guy at a party full of people who'd passed him by. Exactly what I wanted them to see. "Ladies and gentlemen," Jennifer's voice cut through the conversations. She stood on the small platform the venue used for speeches, microphone in hand, spotlight finding her like she'd planned it, which she had. "Thank you all so much for being here tonight. 10 years ago, I married my best friend." I tuned out the opening. I'd heard this speech before, in various forms, at various company events. The story of us, carefully edited for brand consistency. The meet-cute at a coffee shop, the proposal in front of her parents, the wedding that her mother still called tasteful, like it was a compliment. All of it true, technically. All of it missing the parts that mattered. And I've learned so much about what it means to be partners in this journey we call life. Trevor had moved closer to the platform. He was smiling up at her with an expression I recognized because it used to be mine, That look that said she was the only person in the room. That said he'd follow her anywhere. That said he had no idea what he was getting into. But I also need to acknowledge someone else who's been incredibly important to me this past year. Here we go. My heart rate didn't change. I'd known this was coming. I'd been counting on it, actually. I shifted my weight slightly, making sure I was visible in her sightline, making sure the family members nearest me would catch my reaction. My work husband, Trevor Marsh. The room did that thing where half the people laughed because they thought it was a joke, and the other half got quiet because they knew it wasn't. Trevor gave a modest wave. Jennifer beckoned him up to the platform. He climbed the steps, and she handed him her champagne glass, keeping the microphone. Trevor has been there for me through every late night, every crisis, every moment when I needed someone who really understood the pressure I'm under, someone who gets what it takes to succeed in our world. She turned to look directly at him. Someone who shows up, someone who isn't afraid of the work, a real man. She said those last two words with emphasis, and Trevor grinned like he'd won something. Then Jennifer turned to find me in the crowd. The spotlight followed her gaze. Suddenly everyone was looking at me, this supposedly oblivious husband, to see how I'd react to my wife publicly praising another man at our anniversary party. I smiled. And of course, Jennifer continued, her voice dripping with something the strangers in the room probably thought was affection. I need to thank my husband Daniel, because let's be honest. She paused for effect. None of this would have been possible without the man who made this affair possible. The word affair hung in the air like a grenade with the pin pulled. Some people laughed nervously. Some people gasped. Trevor's smile faltered for half a second before he decided to commit to the bit, raising his glass higher. Jennifer's parents, sitting near the front, looked at each other with expressions that suggested they'd been expecting something like this, but had hoped they were wrong. Every eye in the room landed on me. I kept smiling. I raised my glass in a slow, deliberate motion. I met Jennifer's eyes across the crowd and held her gaze for exactly 3 seconds, long enough to let her think she'd won, long enough to let everyone else feel deeply uncomfortable. Then I said, clearly enough for the people nearest me to hear, "To the happy couple." I drank, set down my glass, and walked toward the exit. Behind me, the room erupted in whispers. I heard Jennifer try to restart the party energy. "Oh, come on, it was a joke. Daniel knows I'm kidding. Daniel—" I didn't look back. In the elevator down, alone, I pulled out my phone. I opened my encrypted email app, the one I used for work, the one that logged everything and backed up to servers Jennifer and Trevor would never think to check. I navigated to my drafts folder, to the email I'd written 3 weeks ago, and revised 7 times since. Subject line, code, toast. Recipients, 3 board members at Hamilton Ridge Analytics, 1 outside counsel who specialized in employment liability, 1 journalist I'd been cultivating at the Business Journal who'd been looking for a story about ethics in tech companies. Attached, 47 pages of documented evidence, Slack messages, hotel reservations, expense reports for client dinners that I'd cross-referenced with actual client contact logs, proving they were lies, photos from company cameras, VPN logs showing late-night access from Jennifer's account and Trevor's account to shared drives they had no business accessing, a sworn statement from an HR rep who'd tried to report concerns about their relationship and been shut down, and screenshots. God, so many screenshots. Jennifer and Trevor discussing which promotion to push through for him. Jennifer and Trevor making fun of other employees. Jennifer and Trevor planning weekend trips and billing them to company projects. Jennifer and Trevor discussing me, how boring I was, how checked out, how I'd never understand what real ambition looked like. I hovered my thumb over the send button. In my head, I counted down from 5. 5. Jennifer on that platform, glowing under the spotlight. 4. Trevor's hand on her back, possessive and public. 3. A real man, 2. The man who made this affair possible. 1. I pressed send. The email whooshed off into the night, carrying with it the carefully constructed life my wife had built on company time and company resources. Carrying with it Trevor's career. Carrying with it the reputation Hamilton Ridge had spent millions building as a values-driven workplace. The elevator doors opened to the parking garage. I walked to my car, a 7-year-old sedan that Jennifer called serviceable when her friends asked, and sat in the driver's seat without starting the engine. My phone buzzed. Board contact. Received. Emergency session scheduled for 6 a.m. You're certain about this? Me. 10 years certain. Board contact. It's going to be ugly. Me. Good. I started the car and drove home to the house I'd be moving out of by the end of the month. I'd already signed a lease on a decent apartment across town. I'd already opened separate bank accounts. I'd already boxed up everything that mattered to me and moved it to a storage unit Jennifer didn't know about. I'd been planning this for 7 months, since the night I'd found her phone unlocked on the kitchen counter and seen the message that confirmed what I'd suspected for 6 months before that. 7 months of watching. 7 months of documenting. 7 months of letting her think she was getting away with it, letting Trevor think he'd won, letting everyone at Hamilton Ridge think I was just the boring IT husband who didn't notice the whispers. 7 months of building a case so airtight that when it finally detonated, there'd be nowhere for them to hide. The toast wasn't the revenge. The toast was the signal. And the signal meant the game was over. As the story unfolds, hit the hype button, like, subscribe, and write in the comments. Would you forgive them or walk away? I slept better that night than I had in months. Not because I was at peace, I wasn't, but because the waiting was finally over. The hardest part of revenge isn't the action, it's the patience. It's watching the people who hurt you walk around happy and oblivious while you sit on evidence that could destroy them, knowing you only get one shot at this, knowing if you move too soon they'll recover. I'd gotten very good at patience. My alarm went off at 5:47 a.m. I showered, shaved, put on my second-best suit. The good one would have looked suspicious. Jennifer's side of the bed was still empty. She'd probably crashed at her parents' place or Trevor's apartment, wherever affair partners went when they'd just publicly humiliated their spouses and needed to decide if it was funny or career-ending. She'd know soon enough. I made coffee in the kitchen that still had her decorating touches everywhere. The expensive espresso machine I'd never learned to use. The herb garden in the window that had died 3 months ago and never been replaced. The calendar on the wall that showed her work events and company mixers, but hadn't included anything involving me since February. My phone buzzed at 6:14 a.m. Board contact. It's done. They're in damage control mode. Boss is on his way to the office. Recommend you arrive normal time. Act normal. Me. When have I ever been anything but normal? I drove my serviceable sedan to the Hamilton Ridge Analytics campus in the industrial district they'd rebranded as Innovation Corridor. The building had been a manufacturing plant once. You could still see the bones of it under all the glass and steel they'd wrapped around the original structure. Inside was all open floor plans and standing desks and collaboration spaces, the kind of office that looked great in recruiting materials and felt dystopian when you actually worked there. I badged in at 7:43 a.m., same as always. Nodded to security, same as always. Took the elevator to the 3rd floor where IT had our corner near the server rooms, same as always. But the office wasn't the same as always. People clustered in groups of 3 and 4, voices low, phones out. I caught fragments as I walked past. Saw the video. Can you believe she actually said, "Think they'll get fired"? The energy was electric, that particular frequency of excitement people get when something dramatic happens to someone else. Priya from HR caught my eye and quickly looked away, which told me everything I needed to know. I'd done contract work with Priya 2 years ago on a data security audit. She was smart, careful, and completely loyal to whoever signed her performance reviews. If she was avoiding me, It meant she'd already been briefed on some version of what was coming. I settled at my desk, logged in, checked my email. Nothing official yet. I opened my normal morning routine, system logs, security alerts, the automated reports that tracked network activity overnight. Everything clean. Except there in the VPN logs, Jennifer's account, 11:47 p.m. last night. Trevor's account, 11:53 p.m. Both of them accessing personnel files they had no authorization to view, probably trying to figure out who had access to the evidence I'd compiled, probably trying to get ahead of the story. Too late for that. I screenshotted the logs and saved them to my encrypted drive, not because I needed more evidence, I had plenty, but because I wanted to watch them scramble in real time. Daniel. I looked up. Marcus Delgado, Hamilton Ridge's CEO, stood at the edge of my cubicle. Marcus was 56, gray-haired, wore expensive suits that looked casual on him, and had built this company from a 12-person startup to 800 employees in 6 years. He was good at strategy, good at fundraising, and very, very good at protecting the company's reputation. Right now, he looked like he'd aged 5 years overnight. Marcus, morning. Can we talk? Conference room 3? Sure. I saved my work, locked my computer, and followed him past rows of desks where people suddenly became very interested in their monitors. Conference room 3 was small, windowless, designed for the kind of conversations you didn't want overheard. Marcus closed the door behind us. He didn't sit. Neither did I. The board held an emergency session this morning, he said. 6 a.m. I heard the building was open early. Daniel. He looked at me like he was trying to solve a puzzle he hadn't known existed until 12 hours ago. The toast, last night, that was the signal, wasn't it? I'd practiced this moment in my head so many times. I'd imagined different versions, angry, cold, triumphant. But standing there in that small room with a man who'd never given me more than 30 seconds of attention in 4 years, I found I didn't want to perform. I just wanted him to know. Yes, I said. Marcus closed his eyes. Jesus Christ. You should probably sit down. He sat. I stayed standing. I liked the height advantage. The board received a full report, Marcus said. 47 pages. Documentation of an ongoing affair between 2 senior employees. Misuse of company resources. Possible hostile work environment claims. Falsified expense reports. Conflicts of interest in promotion decisions. And enough communications evidence to support all of it. He opened his eyes and looked at me. You've been investigating your own wife. I've been doing my job. Network security includes monitoring for unauthorized access and policy violations. For 7 months. It took 7 months to build a case that couldn't be dismissed as a personal vendetta. Why not come to me, or HR? I almost laughed. Jennifer is VP of Communications. She controls the narrative at this company. Trevor runs creative strategy. He's your golden boy, the guy you bring to board meetings when you need someone polished. If I'd come to you 6 months ago with suspicions, what would you have done? Marcus didn't answer, which was answer enough. But now, I continued, now you have 47 pages of evidence that exposes the company to lawsuits, PR disasters, and ethics violations that could tank partnerships. Now you don't have a choice. They're suspended, Marcus said quietly. Pending formal investigation. The board wants them gone, but legal says we need to follow process. How long? Week, maybe 2. We're offering severance if they go quietly. If they fight, he shook his head. It gets worse for everyone. It's going to get worse anyway. What does that mean? I pulled out my phone, showed him a text from a reporter at the Business Chronicle. I have someone asking about ethics concerns at Hamilton Ridge. Something about senior employees and conflicts of interest. Do I give her no comment, or do I give her the story? Marcus's face went pale. You contacted the press? I suggested she might want to look into corporate culture at fast-growing tech companies. She's a good journalist. She asked the right questions. This will destroy the company's reputation. No, I said. Your VP and your director destroyed the reputation. I'm just documenting it. Why? The word came out somewhere between angry and broken. Why not just divorce her? Take the high road? Why burn everything? I leaned against the wall, arms crossed. You ever been publicly humiliated in front of everyone you know? Had your wife toast another man at your anniversary party? Had hundreds of people watch her call him a real man with you standing right there? It was a joke. It wasn't. My voice stayed level. That was important. It was a message. She wanted me to know that she'd won, that she'd moved on to someone better, that I was disposable. I paused. So I decided to show her what disposable actually looks like when it has 7 months to plan. Marcus stood up. The board is going to want to talk to you. I assumed. They're also talking about restructuring the IT security division, creating a formal compliance and risk management position, someone to prevent this kind of thing from happening again. Smart. They want to offer it to you. I'd known this was coming. Board contact had hinted at it in our last encrypted message, but hearing Marcus say it out loud still felt surreal. I'd walked into this building 4 years ago as a contractor and spent every day since being treated like furniture by people like Jennifer and Trevor. Now they were gone, and the board wanted to give me a title. What does it pay? I asked. 30% increase, stock options, office on the executive floor. I'll think about it. Daniel. Marcus moved toward the door, then stopped. I don't know whether to be impressed or terrified. Why not both? He left without answering. I stayed in the conference room for another minute, pulling out my phone, checking the office Slack channel. Messages were flying. Did anyone else hear Jennifer and Trevor are suspended? I heard fired. I heard it's about the party last night. What happened at the party? You didn't see? Someone posted video. I opened my personal phone, the one I'd kept completely separate from work, the one Jennifer had never touched. Found the text from my cousin Jake, the one I'd asked to record the toast for memories. He'd uploaded the clip to a private YouTube link. 47 views already, and it was only 8 in the morning. I texted him. Make it public. Jake. You sure? Me. I'm sure. Then I texted the journalist. Call me in 1 hour. I'll give you an interview. 2 days later, Friday evening, I sat in my apartment, the same one I'd used for surveillance, now my actual home, reviewing documents for the divorce. Jennifer's lawyer had filed a petition claiming she was entitled to half of everything plus spousal support based on the standard of living she'd become accustomed to during our marriage. My lawyer had responded with documentation of her income, her assets, and the fact that her unemployment was due to her own terminable misconduct. Spousal support wasn't happening. The house would be sold and split, retirement accounts divided, clean separation. Jennifer wanted the house. She'd sent 3 emails through lawyers saying it was important to her, that she'd grown up nearby, that she had emotional attachment. What she meant was, she couldn't face the humiliation of losing the house on top of everything else. I had no emotional attachment to it. It was just a building. But I understood leverage. I texted my lawyer. Let her have the house. He called me back in 5 minutes. Are you sure? It's worth $400,000. Your half is $200,000 in equity. Let her have it. In exchange, I want her to waive spousal support permanently, take full responsibility for the remaining mortgage, and agree to a fast, uncontested divorce. 30 days. She'll never agree to that. Tell her if she doesn't, I release all the documentation from the company investigation to the divorce court. Every message, every expense report, every violation. Make it public record. That's nuclear. That's leverage. My lawyer hesitated. You're sure you want to use this? Once it's in court documents, anyone can access it. I'm counting on it. He sent the offer that evening. Jennifer's lawyer responded by Saturday afternoon. She'd agree to the terms. She'd waive spousal support. She'd take the house and the mortgage. She'd sign an uncontested divorce. In exchange, I wouldn't release the evidence publicly through the divorce proceedings. I'd won. Clean separation, no long court battle, no spousal support. Everything I'd wanted from the divorce. But I still had one more move to make. Saturday night, I got in my car and drove to Trevor's apartment. I'd looked up the address weeks ago. It was in the documentation Rita had provided. Nice building, expensive part of town, the kind of place a creative director could afford when he was pulling Hamilton Ridge salary. I parked across the street and waited. At 8:47 p.m., Jennifer's car pulled up. She got out, walked to the building entrance, buzzed Trevor's apartment. He let her in. I waited 30 minutes. Then I called Trevor's phone. He didn't answer. I called again. This time he picked up. "Who is this?" "Daniel. I'm outside your building. I can see Jennifer's car in the visitor parking." Silence. Then, "What do you want?" "I want you to know that I know she's there. I want you to know that even though you're both fired, even though everything is over, you're still together. Playing house. Planning your comeback." "We're not planning anything. We're just—" "It doesn't matter what you're doing. It matters that I know. It matters that I'm watching. It matters that every time you think you're safe, every time you think you've moved on, you'll remember that I'm still out here, still paying attention, still documenting. This is harassment. No, harassment would be contacting you repeatedly with threats. This is one phone call to let you know I haven't forgotten. There's a difference. Leave us alone. Gladly, after tonight. But I needed you to understand something. You don't get to destroy my life, take everything I built, humiliate me publicly, and then just move on like nothing happened. You don't get to be happy while I'm picking up the pieces. You get to spend the rest of your life knowing that your happiness came at my expense, and that somewhere out there, I remember. And I don't forgive." I hung up before he could respond. Then I drove to Jennifer's parents' house, big suburban home in a neighborhood where everyone pretended their families were perfect. I'd been there for holidays, for dinners, for 10 years of performing the role of good son-in-law, while Barbara criticized my career and Jennifer's father pretended to like me. The lights were on. I parked on the street and knocked on the door. Barbara answered. Her face went through several emotions in quick succession: surprise, fear, anger, something that might have been shame. "Daniel, what are you doing here?" "I need to talk to you and Richard." "It's late." "I know. This won't take long." She let me in, reluctantly. Richard appeared from the living room, reading glasses on, the posture of a man who'd been successful enough to retire early and didn't know what to do with himself. "Daniel," Richard said, "if this is about Jennifer—" "It is, but not the way you think." I stood in their entryway, not sitting, not making myself comfortable. "I want you to know that I'm agreeing to let Jennifer have the house in the divorce." Barbara's eyes widened. "You are?" "In exchange for a fast, clean separation and no spousal support. But yes, she wants the house, she can have it." "That's generous. It's practical. But I need you to understand something. I'm not doing this because I've forgiven her. I'm not doing this because I want to be friends. I'm doing this because I want the divorce done fast so I can move on with my life. And I want you both to know that what happened, the affair, the lies, the public humiliation, that's on her, not on me." "Daniel, she made mistakes," Barbara started. "She made choices, deliberate, calculated choices over 18 months. She didn't make a mistake. She built a relationship with another man while lying to me every single day. She committed fraud at her job. She created a hostile work environment. And when she got caught, she tried to make me the villain." Richard shifted uncomfortably. "Maybe you both share some blame." "No." My voice stayed level, but I put steel in it. "I worked my job. I paid my bills. I tried to save our marriage while she was sleeping with Trevor. I don't share blame for her choices." "But the way you handled it," Barbara said. "Going to the company, getting her fired, that was vindictive. That was accountability. She broke company policies. I documented it. The company took appropriate action. If that destroyed her career, she did that to herself. You could have handled it privately. She chose to handle it publicly. At our anniversary party, in front of everyone we know. She made the choice to escalate. I just responded." Richard rubbed his face. "What do you want from us, Daniel?" "I want you to stop protecting her. Stop making excuses. Stop pretending this is somehow my fault or a shared failure. Your daughter had an affair, committed fraud, and got fired. Those are facts. And every time you try to soften them or blame me, you're enabling her to never take responsibility. She's our daughter, and I was your son-in-law for 10 years. Did that ever matter to you?" Barbara looked away. Richard studied the floor. "I thought so." I moved toward the door. "Enjoy your daughter and her new boyfriend. I hope they're worth it." I left before they could respond. Got in my car and sat there for a minute, hands shaking slightly. Not from fear or anger, from the release of finally saying what I'd wanted to say for months. Then I drove home, poured myself bourbon, and slept better than I had in a year. Monday morning. 2 weeks since the toast. The divorce paperwork would be finalized by end of business today. Jennifer had signed everything. Trevor had gone silent. The company had moved on. But I had one final move. At 10 a.m., I sent an email to Patricia with a subject line, "Recommendations for System-Wide Policy Reform." Attached was a 20-page proposal outlining new ethics policies, mandatory conflict of interest disclosures, anonymous reporting systems for workplace concerns, and regular audits of expense reports and network access. Everything designed to make sure what Jennifer and Trevor did couldn't happen again. Everything designed to make their scandal the reason for permanent, structural change. Patricia responded in 30 minutes. "Brilliant. Presenting to the board Thursday. This is exactly what we needed." At 11 a.m., I got a call from Rebecca at the Chronicle. "Daniel, I wanted to give you a heads up. I'm running a follow-up story tomorrow. How one employee changed corporate ethics at a fast-growing tech firm. You're going to be featured prominently. I didn't ask for publicity. You're already public. The story's already out there. I'm just making sure it's told accurately. And I wanted to let you know, I spoke with Jennifer's lawyer." "And?" "She declined to comment on your allegations, but she did say Jennifer is considering a book deal. Her side of the story. Working title, Surviving Corporate Betrayal." I almost laughed. "Let me guess. I'm the betrayer." According to her narrative, yes. But here's the thing. I also spoke with 3 other industry publications. They're all covering this story now. Ethics in tech, workplace affairs, accountability. And in every version, the evidence speaks for itself. She can write a book, but she can't change the documentation. Good. One more thing. Off the record? Sure. What you did, documenting everything, building the case, waiting for the right moment, that takes serious patience, serious planning. Most people would have confronted her immediately and made it a messy divorce. You played it strategic. Is there a question in there? Yeah. Do you regret it? Any of it? The public humiliation, the job loss, the way it all went down? I thought about that. Thought about the anniversary party, Jennifer's face when she realized what she'd done, Trevor's desperation in the parking garage. Thought about the moment I'd pressed send on that email, knowing it would burn everything down. "No," I said. "I don't regret any of it." Rebecca was quiet for a moment. "That's what I thought. Thanks, Daniel." She hung up. I sat in my office, looking out at the city, at the building where Jennifer had once commanded respect and authority. She was gone now. Trevor was gone. The old guard was gone. And I was still here. At 2:00 p.m., my phone buzzed. Unknown number. Against my better judgment, I answered. "Daniel." Jennifer's voice, smaller than I'd ever heard it. "I signed the papers. The house is mine. The divorce is final." "I know." I wanted to talk to you before it's completely over. We don't have anything to talk about. Please, just 5 minutes. Something in her voice made me pause, not sympathy, just curiosity about what she could possibly say now. Where are you? I asked. Downstairs, in the lobby. They won't let me up without an employee escort. Of course they wouldn't. Her badge didn't work anymore. I'll be down in 5 minutes. I took the elevator to the lobby. Jennifer stood near the security desk, looking smaller somehow without her VP title and her office and her authority. She wore casual clothes, jeans, a sweater, like she'd stopped trying to perform. Let's walk, I said. We went outside to the small plaza in front of the building. Spring evening, cool but not cold. People from other companies walked past, commuting home. Nobody recognized us. Nobody cared. I wanted to apologize, Jennifer said. Okay. For the affair, for the lies, for the way I handled everything at the party, for letting it get this far. Okay. Is that all you're going to say? What do you want me to say? That I forgive you? That we can move on and be friends? That wasn't an apology. That was you trying to feel better about what you did. I do feel bad. You feel bad that you got caught. You feel bad that you lost your job. You feel bad that everyone knows now. You don't feel bad about the affair itself. If you did, you wouldn't still be with Trevor. She looked away. How did you know? I know everything, Jennifer. That's what you never understood. I see everything. I track everything. I pay attention. While you were performing and manipulating and building your personal brand, I was watching, learning, documenting. You're not the man I married. No, I'm the man you turned me into. You taught me that nice guys finish last. That playing by the rules means getting walked over. That the only way to win is to be smarter, colder, and more patient than everyone else. I looked at her directly. So thank you, I guess, for the education. I never meant to hurt you. Yes, you did. You just didn't mean to get caught. Jennifer's eyes filled with tears. Real ones, maybe, or performed ones. I couldn't tell anymore and didn't care. What happens now? She asked. Now? You rebuild your life. You find a new job, probably at a smaller company that doesn't check references too carefully. You stay with Trevor until the novelty wears off and you realize he's just as boring as I was, just in different ways. You write your book, try to spin yourself as the victim, and maybe convince a few people who don't look too closely at the facts. You live with what you did. And you? I move on. I do my job. I build systems to make sure people like you don't get away with it next time. And I sleep well at night knowing that when someone tried to destroy me, I burned their whole world down first. That's not moving on, Daniel. That's revenge. No, I said. Revenge was the plan. This? I gestured at the building, at her, at the space between us. This is just what winning looks like. Jennifer stared at me like she was seeing me for the first time, like the boring IT husband had been a disguise, and now she was finally meeting the real person underneath. You're scary, she said quietly. Good. Maybe you'll think twice before you underestimate someone again. She turned to walk away, then stopped. For what it's worth, I did love you once. I know. I loved you too. But love isn't enough when one person decides winning matters more than everything else. You taught me that. Jennifer walked away. I watched her cross the plaza and disappear into the parking garage, heading for the car I'd let her keep, driving to the house I'd let her have. And I felt nothing. Not anger, not satisfaction, not even victory. Just the quiet certainty that I'd won. I took the elevator back to my office, sat at my desk, opened my laptop, started working on the next phase of the ethics reform proposal. Because this was never about Jennifer and Trevor. This was about changing the system that let people like them thrive while people like me did the work and got ignored. This was about making sure that the next time someone tried to play games with company policies and other people's lives, there would be consequences. Real consequences. The kind that ended careers and destroyed reputations and made everyone else pay attention. Patricia was right. Revenge was exhausting. But accountability? Accountability was energizing. My phone buzzed one last time. A text from the lawyer. Divorce finalized. You're officially single. I stared at the message for a moment. 10 years of marriage, over. Not with a fight or a dramatic scene, just with a legal filing and a signature. Then I deleted the message and got back to work. 3 hours later, at 7 p.m., I finished the policy proposal. Sent it to Patricia, closed my laptop, stood at my office window looking down at the city, at the lights coming on in buildings across downtown, at the life continuing below me while I stood on the executive floor of a company that had finally decided accountability mattered. My phone buzzed. Patricia, policy proposal approved. Board meeting Thursday. You'll present. Me. Understood. Patricia. You did it, Daniel. You actually changed the company. I didn't respond right away. Just stood there thinking about the anniversary party, the toast, the moment I'd pressed send on that email. Thinking about how 7 months of planning had led to this. A promotion, a divorce, 2 destroyed careers, and a company forced to take ethics seriously. Finally, I texted back, they toasted to the man who made their affair possible. I suppose it's only fair I made everything after that possible, too. Then I turned off my phone, left my office, and walked out of the building. Behind me, the lights stayed on in the windows. Hamilton Ridge Analytics, continuing to operate, continuing to grow, now with systems in place to make sure what Jennifer and Trevor did couldn't happen again. And I walked away, knowing I'd won every single battle. Not because I was stronger, not because I was smarter, but because I'd been patient, because I'd documented everything, because I'd waited for exactly the right moment to burn it all down. Because when someone humiliates you publicly, when they destroy your marriage, when they commit fraud and get away with it, you don't just fight back. You make sure they never forget what happens when they underestimate the quiet guy in IT who sees everything.